It was just a few days before Halloween in 2018. A little girl was gearing up for an evening of trick-or-treating. It's one of the most fun days as a child. It's the one time a year where zombies walk the streets alongside Disney princesses and Marvel characters. For that one day, you can be anyone you want to be. And of course, all the free candy only makes the day so much better. 3-year-old Addison was waiting for her mom to meet up with her and her dad so she could show off her costume and fill her bag with candy. However, little Addison's mommy didn't show up to take her trick-or-treating, and that's when the family knew that something was very wrong. When the truth finally came out, Halloween would never again be a day of celebration.
All Hallows Horrors.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kimbyrleigha. If you've never been here before, nice to finally meet you. I should have said Kimbyrleigha. I forgot. Well, it finally happened to me though. I got COVID for the first time and it is miserable. I don't know if you can tell how bad I sound. I'm doing my best to show up today for Lauren's story, another one, a part of my All Hallows Horror series this fall, and I didn't want to drop the ball because the story needs to be told. I'm always surprised when I find out about a case that I feel did not get that much attention, but it's so shocking that I can't stop thinking about it, and that is this case. It's October, Halloween is coming, like my shirt says, and it's time to get into the spooky spirit. And for me, that means decorating my set with haunting items and listening to scary Audible titles that get me in the mood for all things creepy and eerie. That's why I'm excited about our sponsor for today, and of course, it's Audible. And right now, I'm listening to Insomnia by Sarah Pinborough. This is a thriller, and it follows the story of a woman named Emma who's about to turn 40, and she's very nervous, but not for obvious reasons. It's because when her mom turned the big 4-0, she lost her mind. And now Emma's scared the same thing is going to happen to her. You gotta get this title on Audible. And as an Audible member, you can choose one title a month to keep from their entire catalog. That includes all the latest bestsellers and new releases, and there are so many to choose from. Members get full access to a bunch of included audiobooks as well as Audible originals. And this one right here, Are You Afraid of the Dark podcast, looks really fun for my daughter and I to listen to, and there's a bunch of other podcasts you can choose from. You can download any of the included titles as much as you want. There's a spooky collection that you can browse right now, and it's full of editors' picks to get you in the mood for the spooky season. But if you're looking for something different, Audible has an ever-growing and very large selection of audiobooks from so many different genres, from true crime to interesting new releases that include anything from business and finance to fantasy and much more. There's so much value to an Audible membership. You get a chance to discover new titles and stories in new formats all the time, like a new podcast or the exclusive words and music series. New members can try Audible for free for 30 days. Just go to audible.com/Kimber or simply text Kimber to 500-500 to try Audible free for 30 days. The Audible app makes it so easy to listen anytime, anywhere. And I know a lot of you like to listen while you're traveling, doing your household chores, or just getting some time to yourself to relax. So I know that Audible will fit right into your routine. And I want to thank Audible once again for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get into the story for today. And I'm going to be introducing you to not only Lauren Kidd, but her family as well. And to do that, I have to go back in time and introduce you to Lauren's mom and dad, Joe and Krista Kidd. And they are both so adorable, and they're even more adorable as a pair. In 1992, Krista had moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma as a 23-year-old single mama of her 3-year-old son, Joshua. She had just landed a job at an apartment complex as a leasing agent, and one day she crossed paths with 22-year-old Joe Kidd while he was working at the complex's fitness facility, and they hit it off. Joe accepted Krista's son as his own, and they became a little family of 3 and ultimately got married. Now, 3 years later, Krista had some exciting news. She was pregnant. And of course, with this being Joe's first child of his own, there were so many emotions running through him. He was scared, he was excited, he was wondering if he was ready for this, but who is, right? Nothing prepares you. But soon enough, the time had come. The couple welcomed little Lauren Ashley Kidd into the world on December 5th, 1996, just a few days before Krista's own birthday on December 11th and 20 days before Christmas. Krista said that Lauren's birth was the best birthday and Christmas gift combined that she could have ever asked for. She thought her newborn looked like a perfect porcelain doll, and everyone in Joe's family was waiting for Lauren's arrival. She was Joe's parents' first granddaughter, so it was a very special time for them. Joe's dad, Dustin, who was known as Dusty but called Pawpaw by the family, was just the best with kids. He was the type of grandpa that did everything for his grandchildren, not just teaching them things, but just loving on them so much. Even Joshua, who wasn't Joe's biological child, was treated like family, and he loved Pawpaw, and so did little Lauren. There's a home video from a visit they made to Mumford, Tennessee, to Pawpaw's in April of 1998, right after Lauren had turned 16 months old. And how precious is this video of her just jumping on Pawpaw, and he is just loving every moment. This family was very close. You can tell how important relationships like this mean to the Kidd family. They truly valued the love that they shared with one another, and life was good until change came a year later in 1999. The company that both Krista and Joe had been working for, they went into bankruptcy, so they had to make a big move out to Phoenix, Arizona for a new job opportunity. But Joe and Krista were the type of people who made things fun and memorable. They knew this was going to be hard on their family. So instead of making it a work-related move, they looked at it like an adventure, a family vacation that they called their working vacation. Here's a cute picture of Krista, Joe, Josh, and Lauren on that vacation, a 1,000-mile road trip. And they weren't in a rush. They took their time. They took in all their new surroundings, being tourists in their new home. The kids had never seen mountains before. The weather was different. The view was new to them. And little Lauren was adventurous like many children that age. Everything new was exciting. She was pointing at everything and asking, "Mama, what's that? What's that?" And they were documenting everything with pictures and home videos. It wasn't easy moving far away from everything that they were used to, but they made the transition as easy as possible. Lauren was a very active little girl. She loved to sing. She was actually a very good singer from a young age and also developed a love for sports. She thrived playing soccer and was absolutely fearless. She started playing when she was only 4 years old, and her favorite position was actually a goalie. Krista was kind of surprised because, the ball was coming flying towards Lauren, but she had no fear. She loved it. She was in her element. She, of course, had that sense of adventure. And I want to show you this cute little home video of Joe interviewing Lauren about one of her big games. Joe was so proud of his little girl. He was beaming watching her get into the sport. Lauren made an impression on the field. All eyes were on her. But before the family could truly settle in, they decided they wanted to be closer to family once again. And in 2002, they picked up and they moved all the way back to Tennessee to be close to Joe's father. That's where Lauren started kindergarten, in another new place. But still, being as young as she was, this transition was easy for her. She was excited. She had her cute little Barbie backpack on. She gathered up all her school supplies, ready to take on another new adventure. And Mom was always there to document every moment. And I'm sure she was very glad that she did. I personally really related to this clip of Lauren getting into the car after her first day at school. Krista asked her how it went, and here is Lauren's response.
How was your first day at school?
It was great.
All right.
We took pictures, and whenever it was time to go home, I even got a treat.
You can hear Joe's voice as he's putting on Lauren's seatbelt. He's saying, "Just wonderful," as he's listening to his little girl, excited as ever, as she's asking politely if she can eat her treat on the way home.
It's in my backpack.
All right.
Wonderful. Can I eat it on the way home?
Sure.
Most of us either remember being that little because our parents also made these videos or because we made them for our kids. I have both. I have clips of me growing up and all the memories of my daughter, just like this one of Lauren. The pure joy of innocence and knowing that it will all be lost hurts. And I'm sure that you'll be able to feel that as I continue to tell you what's going to happen and how much pain this family is going to go through. But for now, it was all happiness. Lauren looks so much like her mom with those almond-shaped eyes, the high cheekbones. They were like twins. But there was another little mini me coming because Krista was pregnant with her and Joe's second child that year. And that ultimately made the family decide they needed to be closer to Krista's family so that they could get help with the kids. Now having 3 would prove to be a lot more work with 2 needing to go to school and a newborn coming. It was a lot. So they made the hard decision to relocate back to Oklahoma. With Lauren just settling in back in Arizona to move to Tennessee to be close to Pawpaw and then to realize they would be moving once again, it was tough on her. It would be for anyone. They actually say the stress of moving is as bad as a divorce or death when it comes to all the emotions and changes. I know it comes with a lot of stress, but I beg to differ on it being as bad as losing a loved one. I bet any of us would agree to move anywhere to not have a loved one pass away. But I understand stress-wise, it's difficult. I hate moving myself, but the Kidd family knew that it would be best for them, even though Lauren wasn't dealing very well with all the change. By the fall of 2002, her little brother Dustin was born. Krista went into labor on October 25th, and by the next day, around 2 p.m. on October 26th, little Dustin was born, named after his pawpaw, and Lauren was so excited. She was so happy when she found out she was getting yet another brother. She loved her brothers. She was very protective over them. She cared for them and developed a strong bond with them. She loved being their sister. You can just see the joy. And I wish that I could live in this moment right here forever and not move forward in this story, because at this moment, everyone was so happy, and I absolutely hate what's coming for them. This time of year and this part of the story reminds me of when I had my daughter. She was born on October 28th in 2011, and I brought her home on Halloween, which was already my favorite holiday, but once it had even more significance, it became even more meaningful. And the same goes for the Kidd family. Halloween was a favorite holiday for Lauren and her siblings, and Krista always made it special. And even more so once Dustin's birthday was so close. Every year, they threw a Halloween-themed party, and I do the same for my daughter. It's perfect because everyone is in the spirit. They all get dressed up and get into character. And look how cute little Dustin is right here as Tigger. Lauren was Snow White, and she always loved dressing like a little princess, which is fitting, since to her father at least, she was the closest thing to a real-life princess. To say that Lauren was a daddy's girl would be an understatement. She was his everything, and he was hers. The bond between them is very obvious, and it translates easily through the screen when you watch videos of the two of them. She hangs on her father with her tiny arms wrapped around his neck in a hug that reveals the love and trust that she placed in her daddy. As a family, Halloween was a time when the kids really came together. Everyone was involved in trick-or-treating every year and the birthday festivities. Let me know in the comments because I really like connecting with all of you there. Were there any traditions that you did growing up for Halloween, or maybe that you do now with your family? Because I'd love to hear about them. The Kidd family had traditions that went beyond Halloween. They spent a lot of time learning from Pawpaw. In this video from Thanksgiving in 2004, here he is. And the thing he loved to do was take them hunting. And Lauren, again, she's fearless, not afraid to hold a rifle, learn how to shoot it, listen, and try to take direction. But she was also kind of feisty. And even when Pawpaw would tell her to be careful with that backfire so that she wouldn't hurt herself, she liked to be in control. And there were a few times she didn't exactly listen. But looking back at these moments years later, Dustin, who we see right here when he was a little boy, found this moment to be really cute. He remembered his sister Lauren as always being open to try new things and making sure she had fun with her brothers. She never left them out. She was the type of big sister who always involved them in the things that she was getting into. Unlike some siblings who can't stand their little brothers or sisters, not Lauren. And that was good because she had yet another little brother coming her way. February 2005 brought little Tyler Kidd into the world, and I swear, he looks like Lauren's twin. Look at him. What a cutie pie. And he had a lot of fun with Lauren and her friends. They treated him like their own little baby boy, but actually, they would dress him up in girls' clothes and even put makeup on him. And when Tyler got older, one of Lauren's friends came up and was like, "Oh my God, I remember you. I used to dress you up and put makeup on you." And as embarrassing as it was a cherished memory. Lauren adored her new little playmate and couldn't get enough of dressing him up and transforming him into her own living doll. By this time, the family had a lot keeping them busy with 4 kids running around, but one thing was stable, and that is where they were living, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And like many of the places I talk about, I had never heard of it before. Broken Arrow is a city in northeastern Oklahoma. It's actually the 4th largest city in the state with a population of around 115,000 people, so it's not really a small town. And it's the largest suburb of Tulsa. Another fact I found quite interesting, considering we're talking about a murder, is that Broken Arrow is known as the safest city in Oklahoma. Yep, it's true according to Google. But cities don't kill people. People kill people. And you can never predict who will be living in your safe city. Broken Arrow is also one of the best and most affordable places to live in America for families. And it seemed like the perfect place for the Kidd family, a place where they can raise their children. And they were truly doing their very best to give them everything they needed. I actually wondered what this area was known for because it definitely had the city life, but there's also a lot to do outdoors. Here's a video of the kids spending time swimming. There's Lauren in the foreground. She's 12, almost 13 here. It's 2009. And when I zoomed in on Google Maps, there were so many homes in this area, but it didn't actually look like there was anything else, just a bunch of neighborhoods. I mean, yes, there were nature parks, museums, restaurants, the usual, but I could see how this could get a bit boring for older kids. And well, Lauren was definitely going through a bit of a rough patch at this age. It's an in-between age. You're in middle school, you've got hormones, the uncertainty of just like not fitting in and just coming into your own. And unfortunately, Lauren was having a hard time. Her mental health was suffering. And Krista, she wanted to help as much as she could, so she brought her in for an evaluation with a doctor who ended up diagnosing Lauren with ADHD. I'm sure that you've heard of ADHD and maybe you even suffer yourself. It's a condition that affects someone's ability to concentrate and sometimes control their impulses. So to help Lauren, she was placed on medication to mitigate some of these symptoms. But instead of helping her, the medication started to change Lauren's personality. Rather than the outgoing and playful child she once was, she became withdrawn and quiet. Her mom said that Lauren's essence just faded away. What made Lauren Lauren seemed to become subdued. And slowly, she began to drift away from her old group of friends. And trying to find a place to belong was really hard that year. It was hard for her to navigate these shifting dynamics. And life would get even worse for the then teenage Lauren. This really was hard. I don't know if you remember this, but in 2009, the swine flu pandemic hit. I remember it very well. It was the H1N1 virus, and it was a scary time, very similar to what we saw with COVID, but of course on a somewhat smaller scale. Children, young adults, and the elderly were the most affected. And unfortunately, Lauren contracted it, as well as Dustin and Pawpaw too, and it was bad. And being sick myself right now, I know how much health matters. And honestly, I have personally been trying to make so many steps to try to be healthy. I'm scared of everything right now. But I've had an even bigger scare in 2013. I thought my life was going to be changed forever. Sickness is no joke. And in 2009, this flu was devastating. It swept across the world. It killed more than 284,000 people. Much like the 2020 pandemic, the swine flu affected so many families. They were torn apart because of fatalities. And sadly, Pawpaw was taken away from Lauren and her family. He didn't make it through the swine flu. And if Lauren's mental health was suffering before getting sick, you can only imagine what being ill and then losing someone so close to you would do. It was so unexpected. The kids were just sitting in the driveway one afternoon and Joe pulled up. And that's when he gathered them around and he broke the news to them that Papa had passed away. They could not believe it. They did not want this to be true. He was never coming back. They'd never get to hug him or learn from him again. It was just horrible. And just like that, Lauren had lost one of the major male figures in her life. The whole family felt a void that just could not be filled. Being a teenager is hard enough, but adding a devastating loss while on a mood-altering medication did not make it any easier for Lauren to navigate these very difficult times for her. Here's a family video from 2010, and Lauren, she's holding a ghost-shaped piñata for her brother's Halloween birthday bash as he was turning 8. He's blindfolded, and he's trying to hit it. And of course, Lauren is messing around. She's pulling it up. She's making it harder and harder for him while everyone's laughing and carrying on. But you hear Mama in the background. While Joe is there guiding Dustin, Krista's like, Lauren, come on. You got to make it easier. It's got to be doable for him.
Lauren, come on. It's got to be doable.
And this may seem like normal teenage antics, but behind this small action, there was actually a lot of pain. Lauren was keeping something from her family. She was looking for ways to manage her emotions, and like so many troubled teens, she turned to self-harm. Now, I want us to be sensitive to this topic because it's not always understood, and that's why I'm here. I like to shed light on these things to humanize them and the people that are facing these hardships. I researched it, and it made sense after learning why people do it. They want to feel in control of something when their life is chaotic, and it usually starts when a devastating event occurs, or it could be other trauma, physical, sexual, bullying. Many things can result in individuals turning to harming themselves. And it usually starts small, a little cut here and there on the thigh or on the arms, somewhere you could hide it with clothing. And I read that sometimes it makes a person feel alive, to remind themselves that they're here, that they can feel. And the pain makes them realize that they still exist in this world where they may feel very insignificant and misunderstood and scared. Lauren began cutting herself. She was cutting on her arms. And despite her best efforts to conceal what she was doing, Krista became aware of it. She knew Lauren's secret, and she urged her to please stop. It was really hard for Krista to understand. She had this image of her beautiful daughter in her mind, and she couldn't make sense as to why Lauren would essentially desecrate her body. And that's fair. I think many of us can understand that, being a parent and being afraid for our child, and maybe also feeling like a failure. Like, why is my child turning to this? And what can I do to make them stop? Krista continued to take family videos, but this time, they weren't shots of her carefree daughter smiling and being happy. They were darker and more somber. They were close-up shots of Lauren's self-harm wounds. Krista was monitoring Lauren. Every few days, she would make Lauren roll up her sleeves and present her arms for Krista to take a look at. And she took videos because she wanted to be able to tell if there were more as the days went on. While Lauren complied with her mother's wishes, she started to grow frustrated at the scrutiny. She was convinced that she had everything under control. She didn't need any help from her mom. She thought that Krista was being overbearing and overreacting, trying to control her. She didn't think this self-harm was a big deal, because Lauren was a teenager. And I think we all know that when you're a teenager, you think you know everything. And that can be scary as a parent, knowing that our kids think that they know best when we know that they don't. This was a very trying time for the family. And while Krista and Joe were doing what they thought was right in supporting their little girl, they were already many steps behind. They just didn't know it. It didn't seem to make sense to Krista, but Lauren was hiding a darker secret. One that was the catalyst to this whole situation. But she would tell her parents not to worry, that she was fine, she would figure it out. But she really wasn't. And she just became more and more upset as her parents tried to do their best to help. They were desperate for answers, and it took a while, but Krista finally found out what happened. Lauren was hanging out with a new group of friends at the time, and they all left Lauren behind with a boy in the group. Well, he pushed himself on her. He pinned her against a wall, and he forced her to do sexual things against her will. This was emotionally devastating and physically devastating for Lauren. She was so young. She didn't know how to deal with it. She was so embarrassed to tell her parents what really happened. And I'm sure that you can think of all the terrible feelings that come with something like this. Lauren hid this secret from everyone. But once Krista became aware of everything, she really felt terrible. And she tried to convince Lauren to see a therapist to get help. And finally, she did. And things started to look up. The next couple years went really well for the family. Lauren got better. She was happy again. She was making friends. And one of those friends was named Dylan. Well, he ended up introducing her to a friend of his named Zachary Maine. This was in 2012. He was a skater boy, and Lauren was smitten. And I cannot help but think of Avril Lavigne when I hear skater boy. But instead of saying, see you later, boy, if you know, you know, Lauren was glued to Zach. Everyone could tell that they had such a strong connection. Look how cute they are right here. All smiles. Sparks started to fly between the two love-struck teenagers, and it didn't take long for them to be joined at the hip. Lauren's family accepted Zach right away. Her brothers liked him a lot. He fit right in. They could tell how happy he made Lauren, and he acted like an older brother to Dustin and Tyler. He would play with them, he would hang out with them, and Lauren and Zach officially became a couple in February of 2012 when they were 16 years old. A girl's first love is something very special, and Zach was Lauren's for sure. High school sweethearts. And if there's anything true about teens being in love, it's that they are bound to make some pretty impulsive decisions. But Zach and Lauren's impulsive decisions weren't about, sneaking a kiss underneath the bleachers at school. No, these two decided to take their impulsiveness in love to a whole new level. One day, during Lauren's senior year of high school, her father, Joe, he returned home from work for lunch, and he comes home to find Lauren and her friends carrying boxes from in her room outside. Well, of course, I think he had a sneaking suspicion about what was going on, but Lauren told him matter-of-factly that she was moving out, and he couldn't stop her. She and Zach had gotten their own apartment. And not only that, they were planning to get married. Yes, and this was quite a surprise. Lauren was barely an adult, and her dad was like, okay, I know this was to be expected at some point, but it's the middle of your senior year. But it didn't stop Lauren. She left home to live with her boyfriend. Trying to stop a teenager who has their mind set on something is almost impossible. Krista had already lost that battle before, so this time she let Lauren go off and be independent on her own. But you know what? Joe trusted Lauren and Zach. They were good kids. They were smart with good heads on their shoulders. He was sad. He didn't want to see his baby girl move out, but he trusted that she would make good choices. But not long after this move, Krista became suspicious. It's always said that a mother's intuition never fails, and Krista's intuition was telling her that there was something up with her daughter. She thought that Lauren may be pregnant, and that was why she was rushing everything. Eventually, Krista convinced Lauren to go to a doctor's appointment, and they gave her a pregnancy test. And just as she suspected, it was positive. Krista's intuition was spot on, and on March 22nd, 2015, Lauren gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Addison Nicole Maine. Some parents may be disappointed or mad about their teenage daughter getting pregnant and having a child, but Krista and Joe were overjoyed with Addison's arrival. Joe said that watching his daughter bring another little girl into this world was amazing. And it didn't stop Lauren from achieving her goals either. Just a few months after giving birth, she graduated from high school, and it was a really significant milestone in her life. It marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. She had told her mom when she was moving out that her intention was to graduate, get married, and get a job, and she was on her way to fulfilling those promises. By the next year, on July 16, 2016, Lauren and Zach got married, and it was such a happy day for them and for Lauren's family. They both looked absolutely stunning. Tyler remembers seeing his big sister in her wedding dress with her pretty red hair and just being in awe of her beauty. Zach was smiling from ear to ear. He was just looking at his bride with so much happiness. They were now Mr. and Mrs. Maine. They spent their honeymoon in Branson, Missouri in the Ozark Mountains, where they visited Silver Dollar City, which is an over 60-acre amusement park, and it looks so cool. I had never heard of it before, and that's why I love learning about new things like this. I see why Lauren and Zach would love this. It looks like so much fun, especially right now in the fall with their Harvest Festival going on. Zach and Lauren really liked this funhouse called Grandfather's Mansion. There were a lot of optical illusions, and here's Lauren and Zach in front of this leaning mirror. But Lauren mentioned in a post on Facebook that she appreciated the cave. She said there was so much history and gorgeous structures that she couldn't wait to visit again. And here is a picture of her and Zach inside. So how does everything in Lauren's life go from being so perfect to so perfectly heartbreaking? Everything was falling into place. That is why stories like this are so frightening, because in this moment, life was so good. Everyone loved each other. So how does it all go so wrong? Joe thought that Zach and Lauren would be together forever, but they were so young. Not to say that it's not possible, but many of us know how many changes we go through as a young person, and Lauren was only 19. She was still a child herself in many ways, and now she was raising one of her own with her equally young husband. But they were good parents. They cared so deeply about their little Addison. She was their world. But I also wanted to get to know Lauren more. So of course I went to her Facebook and I looked at the things that she wrote about, what she shared, and what she cared about. I learned that just like me, she likes candy corn. I know that's a rarity. Most people say to just throw it away. Halloween goodies and desserts were her favorite. I also listened to the music that she liked. She listened to Tegan and Sarah and Tovlo, and I really like both of them. Their music is very deep, and it can be soothing for someone like Lauren, who outwardly expressed that she dealt with a lot of anxiety. Here's a post where she said, now she looks as emo as she feels. She said, I'm just gonna avoid all situations that could cause anxiety today. This post was so telling about Lauren on March 11th, just days before Addison's first birthday. She wrote, quote, when you have your own issues, but you push them down so that you can do your best to make everyone pleased with you, but then months, years in the future, they fester and they get worse, and you start changing, and no one tells you until it looks too late. Now who are you? End quote. This sounds like many young people who are coming into their own. They're learning about who they are in this world, and it appears from Lauren's own words that she would suffer quietly, and she would put on a happy face to make everyone else happy. But deep down, not expressing that was changing her. But she was staying strong for her daughter. She loved being with Addison. She loved laying with her and listening to the thunder and the rain. And in this post, she says she's laying on the edge of the bed listening to thunder and rain, and she's loving it. And Addison is laying parallel to the pillows with one foot in her shoulder blade and one on her neck. And I can relate to those days with my own daughter. But there was also a storm brewing inside Lauren. By October of 2016, Lauren posted that as much as she loved spending time with Addison, she loved cuddling her whenever she wanted and watching her learn and grow, she was ready to get out there and start working again. She shared an article in this post. It was about the isolation that mothers feel staying home. She began looking for a job, and her and Zach were also looking for more ways to save money. And that's when the idea of living with another couple they knew from high school came up. They knew a guy named Connor Brunner and his girlfriend Alexandra Finley. So the four of them decided to get a place together. That way they could split the rent and they could afford a bigger apartment with more amenities and room for Lauren, Zach, and little Addison. This right here may have been the complex that they lived in. Lauren was so proud of herself, the apartment, and her silver car. She was also proud that she landed a job. On May 25th, 2017, she posted, "Guess who works at Evolution? This girl." Evolution was a local and well-known smoke shop in their area. They sell everything. They sell, pipes, smoking paraphernalia, e-cigarettes, vapes, that sort of thing. And it was no secret that Lauren enjoyed smoking with her friends. And they frequently went to the store, so she was excited to work there. She would be meeting a lot of new people, a lot of new friends, including one of her best friends, a guy named Blake Beeman. They met when he came in there looking for a birthday gift for a friend, and Lauren was so helpful and so happy. She was easy to talk to, and they quickly became friends. Blake wanted to maintain contact with her because she knew how to help you whenever you were going through something. Lauren was a good friend. And remember that post about isolation as a mom? Well, now she could get out, she could be social again, and she could get back to herself and her life. And that's very important, to feel like you have your own life aside from just being a mom, especially for a young girl like Lauren, who kind of had to put everything on hold to raise Addison. It was a fun time for the two couples living together. They were having fun, they were socializing, and I saw this post from Lauren of Connor sitting on their couch with a donut box on the table, and it says, "Walked out to get donuts, not fam. Connor is on it." This is very reminiscent of a lot of her teenage years. Not too many cares in the world, just trying to make it. And it seemed like Lauren was trying to make it all work out. Here she is in a video with Addison on her second birthday. She loved Frozen, little Elsa and Anna, and everyone doted on Addison. Lauren and Zach, of course, and Zach's parents and Joe and Krista, they love that little girl so much. But reading Lauren's Facebook post, you can definitely tell she was hinting at something. This one said that rereading the same chapter over and over again will not tell you the full story, and isn't that the truth? That was May of 2017. And just a few weeks later, she posted a video about explaining depression to your mother. And she said that it made her cry. She couldn't stop crying watching that video. She also changed her hair color. This was her dark era. She wore the dark lipstick and makeup, and it was almost like an outward expression that Lauren was changing. Her mind was changing, her choices were changing, and as much as she loved Zach, they were drifting apart. The more Lauren came into who she was at the time and getting to know herself a little better, meeting new people and broadening her horizons, there was friction between her and Zach. It's particularly hard when there's a child involved, but a breakup was definitely on the horizon. And maybe the strength to break up with Zach came from a change that she watched her friends go through. Connor and Alex broke up a couple months before this, and Alex had moved out. And maybe knowing that this happens and that you can get through it made it easier to decide to do it for herself. It was hard, but ultimately, Zach decided to leave the apartment and go back and live with his mom, and he took Addison with him. He definitely wasn't happy. This is not what he wanted, but he had no choice. They were young newlyweds, still growing as individuals, while simultaneously trying to grow as a couple with a child. As if that wasn't enough to deal with, they had to grow into their roles as parents now. All of this would put a strain on even the strongest relationships. In 2017, the space between them just grew too wide. They couldn't reconcile, so they call it quits and they filed for divorce. Even when the breakup had already happened, things were getting tumultuous, especially when one of the parties moves on with someone new. There's no doubt that Lauren was a very beautiful girl. She was also intelligent, funny, kind, and she was a great mom. So it's no surprise that it didn't take her long to find love again. However, the fact that she'd move on isn't what caused another rift between her and Zach. It was who Lauren decided to move on with that caused a really big issue. As it turns out, Lauren had found love pretty close to home. In fact, it was in the same apartment. Yes, she and Connor, the roommate that Lauren and Zach move in with. Well, you know what? This is all too common. You've got someone there already. Lauren and Connor already knew each other. They lived together. They were there for each other. They were both going through breakups, and they got close. Connor made Lauren extremely happy. He got her. They clicked. And he was also great with Addison. And Addison already knew him from having lived in the same apartment with him and Lauren and Alex and Zach. It made sense. And it wasn't much of a surprise to people who knew Lauren, but for Zach, it was devastating. When something like this happens to someone like Zach, when he's on the receiving end, all they can really think about is going back to all the times that Connor and Lauren were together when they were all living together with one another. And it can start to drive you crazy. You're just replaying it over and over again thinking, were they planning this all along? But that doesn't change anything. It just seemed like Lauren and Connor found the cure to their broken hearts in one another. Zach was understandably very upset. And Lauren was honest with him. She told him that she was in love with Connor. She didn't want him to find out from somewhere else. But what made it worse is that Zach never really liked Connor to begin with, before he started hooking up with his now ex-wife. Lauren remained in the apartment that she shared with all of them, that she used to share with her ex-husband, except now she was there with Connor and they had it all to themselves. And Lauren and Connor started to live their new lives together. The divorce was finalized in September of 2017. Lauren and Zach had joint custody of their 2-year-old daughter, Addison, and they would switch every week, trying to co-parent as best they could for their daughter's sake. The thing is, there was another reason that Zach wasn't that fond of Connor. He used drugs. And of course, because Lauren was close to him, she began doing drugs as well. And this put even more of a strain on everything. It's hard enough to co-parent, but then you've got partying in the mix and drugs and a new relationship and heartbreak. It was just a lot to deal with. There were arguments. There were arguments between Zach and Lauren, between Connor and Zach, between Connor and Lauren, and everything was just a mess. But let's not forget, they're still young, so there's no surprise that there's drama. Even at any age, this would be a lot of drama. And they like to go out. They like to socialize, bringing even more people into the mix and more drug use. And Lauren's family didn't know what to think. Maybe this too shall pass. But Connor and Lauren, they were still together a year later in the fall of 2018. And nothing had really changed, except Lauren, she had an entirely new group of friends who she did drugs with, hung out with, partied with on a regular basis, including a close friend she met in early 2018, Shayna Jordan. They connected because they had a common interest in partying and smoking pot together. They had a lot of fun together and they weren't always being good girls. They were actually partaking in some pretty risky behavior with sketchy people. They would just meet these people through partying or doing drugs. It definitely wasn't the safest situation that they put themselves in. Now that Lauren was 21, she also went out and started drinking, going out even more, meeting more people to smoke with. And she also started experimenting with harder drugs. It was a dark time for her and her friend Shayna. Shayna said that they were in a very negative state of mind at the time. And around this time, Lauren had this other Facebook profile. The name was Violet Rhea. And the bio says, DID System of 4, we have a 3-year-old daughter currently working at Waffle House. Now, I looked this up, and I might be mistaken, but I looked up DID System of 4, and apparently DID refers to dissociative identity disorder, and a system in relation to DID is actually a group of 2 or more personalities or identities in one person. Some people refer to these different parts of their identity as alters, and it seems to make sense considering this is sort of a alter ego profile of Lauren's. She's got the dark hair and the dark makeup, and she says, we have a 3-year-old daughter, which could reference her alters as a collective. I don't know if she was actually diagnosed with DID, but it doesn't matter. What does is that we can see from this evidence that Lauren was definitely dealing with a lot. She had a lot going on, trying to still find herself. Let's jump to Friday, October 26th of that year, 2018. It's Dustin's birthday, and that day Lauren had made plans with her mom, Krista. Lauren was gonna get picked up from work from Krista, go over her parents' house, but instead, Connor dropped her off that afternoon, and she spent time with her family. Well, being there was difficult because Krista could tell that things were not great with her daughter. And like many times before, she was just trying to help. She wanted Lauren to confide in her, but instead, Lauren shut down. She got upset. She thought that Krista was just prying into her life, and she was an adult now. She could figure it out. So they get into an argument. She ends up storming off and leaving. What Krista didn't know in that moment is that that would be the very last time that she would ever see her daughter. The next night, Saturday, October 27th, Krista gets a phone call from Lauren's friend, Blake. Blake tells her that Lauren is nowhere to be found, and he finds it odd because she was supposed to meet up with her ex, Zach, and little Addison for a trick-or-treating event, and she never showed up. And when Krista heard this, she got a really bad gut feeling. We know that Halloween is a family tradition for them, and Addison was the most important person in Lauren's life. She wouldn't just not show up for something like that. Krista wanted to understand what Lauren had done that day. So Blake started to explain. He said that earlier that day he met up with her. They hung out for a bit, and then he gave her a ride to a gas station nearby, where Lauren told him that she was going to get picked up from some guy named Mike West. Because apparently this Mike guy was a tattoo artist, and he did work out of his house. And Lauren and him were designing a tattoo together, and then she was going to get it done that day. And after this tattoo session, Blake was supposed to pick Lauren back up around 6 p.m. so that she could go meet up with Zach and Addison that evening. Well, Blake starts texting Lauren a little before 6 p.m. asking for an update. And she responded. She's giving him info about the progress of her tattoo. But then she just stops texting. And that was really odd. And Blake wasn't sure what to do. So he's calling Lauren. She's not picking up. So then he calls her friend Shayna. And he's like, have you seen Lauren? She says no. And then she tries texting and calling. She gets no response, which is very unlike Lauren. We know everyone has their phones on them all the time. And Lauren would always quickly respond, but there was just nothing at all. When it was realized that Lauren never showed up to the trick-or-treating event, that caused her friends to become very alarmed. And once it got closer and closer to midnight, that's when Blake reached out to Krista. Something wasn't right. So Krista immediately sends a text to both Connor and Zach. And it was late, but Zach does end up responding. And he's like, yeah, Lauren never showed up for their Halloween event that night with their daughter. And that is when Krista became very concerned. She calls the Broken Arrow Police Department a little after midnight. It was actually 12:09 a.m. in the early morning hours of Sunday, October 28th. As far as anyone knew, Lauren was last seen when she was dropped off at that gas station by Blake the day before. And sure, Blake had gotten text messages from Lauren's cell phone, but no one could prove if that was Lauren texting. No one had actually heard from her or seen her to confirm that she was actually texting them back. They needed to find this Mike West person. Considering it was in the middle of the night, things didn't exactly progress very quickly. But the police did start writing up that missing persons report. They gathered as much information as they could about Lauren and her last known whereabouts. Here's what they knew at the time. Lauren was 5'6", 125 pounds. She has blue eyes, black hair at the time, and was last seen October 27th wearing black jeans with boots. She was also wearing a jacket and a black shirt underneath and a black collar necklace with a heart locket. And she might be seen riding in a red Dodge Dart at 81st Street and Lynn Lane in Broken Arrow, which is right here on the map. And here is a gas station right here. So presumably this is the last one she was seen at. So police start the investigation by trying to figure out the movements of Lauren the day that she went missing. By later that day, they were able to get a hold of this Mike West person. He confirmed that he picked Lauren up at that gas station and they went back to his house. They were designing the tattoo that she wanted, and sometime during their session, Mike said that Lauren's boyfriend Connor came through. This wasn't planned, but Lauren told Mike, you know what, it's fine. I'm just gonna step out for a bit. I'll finish when I get back and I shouldn't be too long. Except Lauren never came back. So now Connor needs to be contacted, and investigators reach out by calling him, asking the last time that he saw Lauren. He told them he thinks it's sometime around lunchtime. It could have been between like 1 or 3 p.m. that afternoon. He went over to Mike's, he picked Lauren up, and he gave her a ride to a nearby Walmart store. He told investigators that Lauren asked him to pick her up and then take her to Walmart to meet up with a friend, and that she was actually just gonna walk over the friend's house, which was close by, okay? But for what, they wondered. So Connor was kind of alluding that it was drug related, but that was the last time he saw her. She never called to be picked back up. I don't know why Lauren was getting rides everywhere at the time. I thought that she had her own car, but apparently she didn't, or it wasn't available. So she was relying on others to get places. Well, at least the investigators have somewhat of a timeline that they can work with. That's good, because now they can go pull up video footage from places like that Walmart to see which direction Lauren went walking in, or if they could catch anything on camera. Meanwhile, when Krista is informed that Connor had come by Mike's to get Lauren, she wants to clarify to investigators that Connor is no longer dating her daughter Lauren. He is her ex-boyfriend. They had broken up a number of times, but recently it seemed like they were broken up for good. Krista goes on to explain that the couple had a pretty toxic relationship and that it had gotten more and more intense the last few months, with the cops even being called. She was actually concerned when she found out that Connor was the one dropping off Lauren that day on Dustin's birthday, because Krista was under the impression that the two of them had officially called it quits. She didn't like Connor. She was definitely not a fan of where Lauren's life was going after they started dating. The drug use, the fights, it just wasn't what she wanted for her daughter. And that was something that Krista tried bringing up that night when she saw Lauren last. And that's why Lauren got so upset. She didn't want her mom meddling. And that's common as a young person. They don't have much experience in love and relationships. They have these ups and downs. But the thing is, Krista had more information that these incidents had become physical. And that wasn't okay. She was trying to warn her daughter to stay away from Connor because he's bad news. And now her daughter's missing, with Connor possibly being the last person to see her. It just felt wrong. And even if it didn't, the men in Lauren's life were going to be looked at. All of them. Blake, Zach, Connor, Mike, and anyone else. The number of women who were killed by their partners or someone close to them is devastating. In the United States, about 3 women are killed by an intimate partner every single day. Just think about that. And worse is that the leading cause of death for pregnant women is homicide. That blows my mind. And usually it's a spouse. Sadly, a lot of the time, the only way women ever leave these kinds of relationships is in a body bag. And Krista is convinced that Connor knew more than he was letting on. But there was also Zach. And we know how angry he was over that breakup. This wasn't a fling either. It wasn't a rebound with Lauren and Connor. No, they stayed together, albeit, they had this on and off relationship according to her mother. But unrequited love is another big reason that people can snap. Zach might have thought, if I can't have her, then no one can. But the only direction investigators could go in was to pull that footage from the Walmart. Here's some of it now. There's the parking lot from different angles. They scrub through it around the times that Connor provided, but they don't see him, they don't see his car, and they don't see Lauren anywhere. Could they have been out of view? Maybe, but they really do not have much to go on here. No one knows where Lauren went. And the search continued for days without any sign of the young mother. And it's said, and we've heard it many times, those first 48 hours after a person goes missing are critical. After those 48 hours pass, the chance of finding a missing person alive becomes smaller and smaller. And those hours seem like an eternity for the Kidd family. And as time went on, their hope of a positive outcome in this case started to dwindle. Halloween, a once happy tradition for this family, became too real. Now it was haunting. The reminders of death and tragedy with every passing trick-or-treater in their ghostly costumes. Without Lauren, the darkness of that night was thicker than usual. The wind was more chilling. Where was she? They didn't have a clue until a couple days following Halloween, when an anonymous tip came in. Someone who was supposedly a friend of Connor's said that they were hanging out with him on Halloween night. And at first, they might have thought it was fake blood, but they saw what looked like blood inside Connor's car. And this wasn't for trick-or-treating, and it wasn't for Halloween, because he was trying to hide it using seat covers. And when they asked Connor about it, he said that he actually hit a dog, and then he had to transport it inside his vehicle, and he just didn't have a chance to clean up the mess. That sounded really suspicious. But at the time, this person wasn't aware that Connor's ex-girlfriend was missing. But now, knowing everything that they knew, this seemed like even more of a connection and not a coincidence. When investigators got this information, they ran a background check. I don't know why they didn't do this earlier, but they find out that Connor was previously charged with misdemeanor domestic battery and obstructing an officer. And this was in the previous year in February. It was an altercation between him and Lauren. But these charges were dismissed in April because Lauren never showed up to court. And we know that many times in domestic situations, the partner who is being hurt will dismiss the charges because they end up going back to their abusive partner. And then the cycle continues. And by the time Connor and Lauren broke up, he had already made his way into yet another relationship. And he seemed uninterested in his missing ex-girlfriend now. What happened to her? Now we're hearing that there was blood in his car, on the passenger seat, on the floorboards. With this new information, the investigators request a search warrant for Connor's cell phone, his car, and his DNA. And they're trying to get in touch with him while they wait for those warrants to come through. They ask him, hey, would you mind coming down to the station and giving a formal statement on record? And he agrees. So they're sitting down with Connor, and we have some audio from this day. He tells them what we already know. He says that he picked up Lauren and they were hanging out for maybe 30 minutes to an hour. It was on October 27th.
I picked Lauren up and we were out for maybe 30 minutes or an hour.
But he now changes part of his story. He said that Lauren was begging him to take her to Target. Why? Because she needed needles, his words, needles for drugs. Lauren's not here to defend herself or to refute any of this information, and he's making it out to look like she's in the middle of getting a tattoo, which she planned for a while, but then she calls him out of nowhere to go get needles. It didn't really make that much sense, but this is his story.
And after she had tried to buy needles from Target, I was like, I'm not trying to support your drug habits. I don't want you to do that. And then I took her to Walmart. Apparently you can buy a box of needles there. And that's how I dropped her off.
He says he's actually against it. He was trying to convince Lauren, don't do drugs, and he was trying not to support her bad drug habit. He didn't want her to do it. But if that was true, then why did he even agree to come pick her up? Because according to Blake and Mike West, and even Krista, the two were over. She wouldn't have reached out to Connor in that moment if she needed a ride. And according to Mike, he came unannounced. It was more of a surprise to Lauren, the way Mike explained it. But Connor goes on to explain that Lauren couldn't get these syringes from Target, so she asked to be brought to Walmart, and he takes her there. But we've heard about this location before, and apparently he says you can buy a box of needles at this Walmart, so he drops her off to do that. But why drop her off and not wait if you're her ride? And remember the first time he spoke to police, he said that she was going to walk to a friend's house. So the story is definitely changing, which is not a good sign. It's never a good sign. And we know that investigators already combed through footage outside of Walmart and they didn't see Lauren or Connor. Something is just not adding up. The more they press Connor, the more the story changes once again. It's just twisting and turning. Now he says, oh no, I didn't leave Lauren behind at Walmart. I took her to a friend's house to get drugs. But then when she tried to get back in, she was doing drugs and I kicked her out of my car. Because remember, he wants to be the good guy. He doesn't want to support this bad habit. He's against Lauren's actions and he's kicking her out because he doesn't want anything to do with this drug habit of hers. And that's why he never took her back to Mike's. He has no idea what happened to her according to him. So his story is that after dropping Lauren off, or I should say, kicking her out alone on the road, he drove around for a little bit, then he made it to work from 4 to 9 p.m. And he's currently working at a family video. Wow, that's a blast from the past. I didn't know that in 2018 there were still video stores, but apparently this one didn't shut down until 2021 after, the pandemic. It was a video game and movie rental store. And according to this sign, they also sold CBD. I looked it up and here it is, 3601 South Aspen Avenue, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. It's not a video store anymore. It's now a cannabis store, and there seem to be a lot of those in this area. I told you there's not much to do here. But remember that they now have Connor's cell phone. Well, they're able to look at the GPS location information to see where Connor was that day. And there's one moment around 6 o'clock p.m., close in time to when he said he picked Lauren up from Mike's, when he's around this area of 51st Street and Aspen. And he's there for about 10 minutes. But he never mentioned this to the investigators. This is about a 9-minute drive for where he worked. It's a straight shot down Aspen Avenue, with Walmart being in between. So what was he doing there? He also went to Walmart, like he said, but that wasn't until 10 p.m. that night. Now we have this alternate timeline. So they go back and they pull footage from that Walmart surveillance around 10 p.m. on October 27th. And sure enough, they spot Connor and he is with a girl. So could he have gotten his times mixed up? Is this him and Lauren? He's seen coming through the doors right here. He's looking down at his arm and he's got a blonde girl to his right. And even though Lauren does change her hair color a lot, this doesn't look like Lauren. She's a white female around his age. They seem very comfortable. They're walking around together. They've got a shopping cart. This young couple walk through the aisles of Walmart. It's a few days before Halloween, so the shelves are filled to the brim with plastic jack-o'-lanterns, fake spider webs, witches' hats, all sorts of other festive decorations, but this couple wasn't there to buy last-minute Halloween treats. Instead, they filled their shopping cart with a couple of items of clothing and something else. Something that stood out even more. Cleaning supplies. They bought a number of different cleaning supplies. Why? Was it in anticipation of a Halloween party? Or was it something more sinister? They're just playfully going down the aisles. And at one point, Connor is like riding the front of the cart while this girl's pushing it. They finally paid for their items and casually walked out the front doors. They were going about their night like they had no care in the world, as if they weren't on their way to clean up a bloody crime scene, as if a girl hadn't been killed that night. When this video is shown to people that are familiar with Lauren and Connor, they identify this girl in the video as Alexandra Finley, which is Connor's other ex-girlfriend, the one that Lauren and Zach used to live with when they all lived together. Remember that? Why was he with her that night? Well, we're about to find out. Because they make contact with Alex and they ask her about this little visit to Walmart with her ex-boyfriend. She explained that night, Connor reached out to her out of the blue on the 27th. He told her this story about how one of his guy friends was with him that night, and he got into an altercation which ended in his friend getting shot. And this friend asked Connor for a ride to the hospital. So as a hero, Connor stepped up and he came through for his buddy and he dropped him off in the emergency room. And now he's worried. He's waiting to hear back about his friend's condition. And meanwhile, he's got a bloody mess to clean up in his car. He was calling his ex to ask her if she wanted to come to Walmart and grab a few things with him and help him clean. For whatever reason, this girl agreed. I mean, I guess Connor's cute. I mean, obviously women who have dated him think so, but wow. Doesn't this story sound sketchy to Alex? Well, investigators asked her that. She explained that at the time, she didn't know Lauren was missing. Remember, this was hours after Lauren was last seen, but a couple hours before she was reported missing to police. And even though Connor's story was crazy, she said he did get in those types of situations. So Alex said she believed him. She even helped him dispose of his bloody clothing that night. And then she proceeded to help him clean up blood in his car. Wow, girls, please take note. Everyone take note of everything in this case, but especially this, the red flags, please, the red stains actually. And there were many. And that cleaning didn't exactly work. Let me show you. So once that warrant came through, they searched Connor's car. Here's the trunk. It had a black plastic tote inside and what looks like a duffel bag. But onto the passenger side, you can see that it looks like someone used some cleaning solution to try to remove the blood, but it didn't work. Even on dark cloth, you can see the stains. And from what's left behind, there must have been a lot of blood on the seat before it was cleaned. It's in the stitching. It's all over the side of the front passenger seat. It's down the middle of the side in between where the seat and the center console meet. And once the evidence technicians removed the seat, they could really see the extent of just how much blood was lost here. Look at this. That part couldn't be reached by someone just trying to stick their hand down there and clean it. It was just soaked all the way down to the metal that holds the seat in place and the hardware that connects the seat, the seatbelt fastener, all over the underneath on the floor. Was this from a dead dog? Was it from a buddy that got shot? Or was this Lauren's blood? Well, the investigators get samples of both Joe and Krista's DNA to create a profile that they could test against the samples they got from Connor's vehicle. And you could have guessed it. It came back to matching to Lauren. With this much blood lost, it was very unlikely that Lauren survived whatever happened in that car. So they confront Connor with all of this information, and he must have known that his story about Lauren leaving his car alive was no longer going to be believable. So what did he do? He changes his story yet again. He says that Lauren had asked him to drop her off to get drugs, and when she got back in the car, she said she needed help, and that he needed to take her to another location, And nothing's making sense in the story at this point, by the way. So if it's sounding kind of all over the place, it is. Because Connor is being caught in lies. The next one being that they weren't alone in this car. No. There were 2 drug dealers with them in his car in the back seat. Lauren was buying drugs from them, and something went wrong, and she began to yell at them. The police were not buying this new story that Connor was trying to sell them. But like with most lies, there might be some truth to this story, so they needed to take a closer look. Many times, when a suspect is trying to get away with a crime, they confess to smaller crimes, and they offer little breadcrumbs of truth, which they conceal within their stories. And it quickly became clear that that's exactly what Connor was doing. They asked him, well, what happened next? Did these men hurt Lauren? And Connor was like, yeah. One of them pulled out a gun and they pointed at Lauren's head and they shot her. Wow. And he goes on to say that this drug dealer, he was going to shoot Connor too, but instead he goes, no. He tells Connor to drive so that they could get rid of Lauren's body. And where might that have been? Well, he mentions an address to investigators, and they had heard it before, 51st Street and Aspen. Conveniently, that's a straight shot from where Connor works on Aspen Avenue. This is the same place where his GPS had him sitting idle for at least 10 minutes around 6 p.m. on October 27th. And here's the most chilling part, and oh my God, this makes my skin crawl. The investigators ask, where can we find Lauren? And Connor just says, behind the Come and Go store. This one right here. So they press him further and they ask, where is she? And he literally says, the trash can. And he says it so casually, like he's talking about throwing away some garbage. The trash can is unbelievable, and it gets worse. It gets much worse. The investigators, they're trying to get clarification. They're like, do you mean a dumpster? And Connor's like, yeah. The investigators want to know why. Why would she be put in there? And Connor the coward, he claims that's just where they put her. But we all know they is really just him. He's an absolute monster. But is it true? It's been days since October 27th. It's around November 4th at the time when investigators are getting this confession from Connor. Trash is picked up regularly, especially from places like gas stations, convenience stores, and they fear that if this is true, then Lauren could be long gone. This is one of the worst parts of this story. They rush over there to the Come and Go, and this is a picture from the front of that store. And when they go around back, they don't find a trash dumpster. It's worse. It's a cardboard-only recycling bin. Now, if you've never seen one of these, they're actually behind a lot of stores that receive a bunch of inventory that come in boxes, and then those boxes are broken down regularly, and they're deposited inside there so that they could be recycled and repurposed, made into new items to be used again. If you think that trash disposal is a horrific thing to think about when it comes to a person being disposed of and lost in a pile of rotting garbage, I hate to tell you that the process of recycling cardboard like this is even more horrific when we're talking about a person being processed and not just cardboard. These bins, for one, you can see the way they're designed, they have this smaller opening in the front where cardboard boxes are meant to be inserted after they're broken down and slip through. However, there's a locked opening portion on top, and that comes open once the recycling truck picks it up and dumps its contents inside their truck. But on the side, there's a door, and it opens for bigger items, like a body in this case. It wouldn't have been hard for Connor to open that side door and throw Lauren inside. And sure enough, they find blood on the outside of that bin, and they locate this bracelet in front of it, which is identified as belonging to Lauren. Now they know that they've uncovered a small piece of truth in Connor's labyrinth of lies. They quickly open this receptacle and they're hoping that they're going to find Lauren inside, but it's too late. It's already been emptied since October 27th. However, they do find blood inside, and it matches to Lauren's DNA. But where is she? This is devastating news, all of it, that Lauren's dead, that her body is missing, and that it may never be found. And now they have to relay this information to her family. Can you even imagine? When Krista and Joe found out, Krista said that their worst fears were confirmed. They broke down. Her mom said she didn't get a chance to tell her goodbye. She didn't get a chance to say she loved her. She didn't get a chance to give her a hug because she didn't know that that was going to be the last time that she would see her. And I feel that pain for her. It's so heartbreaking. And investigators didn't believe Connor's story. They didn't think drug dealers did this, but that was the information that they had in that moment. And that is what they relayed to Lauren's family. But then Krista let it be known that when they heard that Connor was the last person that was with Lauren, they knew this was probably not going to end well. That Connor was dangerous and that he and Lauren had domestic calls with police several times. She knew he was bad news and she just couldn't believe this was real, that she would never see her daughter alive again. She said that all the things that she had talked about with Lauren, everything she wanted to do in her life, would never happen. And when Joe heard, he got up from the table and he just hit the wall and he fell apart. He was in tears and he just lost it. His only daughter, his little princess, she was never coming back. And he said that Lauren was a wonderful person, that she had a full life ahead of her. She didn't deserve this. When the news got to Lauren's ex-husband, Zach, the father of their daughter, he said he was devastated. He said, I kept telling her that he was not a good guy, that she could do so much better. It's just too bad that Lauren couldn't get far enough away from this man. By November 5th, investigators were trying to get Connor to confess that he was the one who killed Lauren and to stop placing blame elsewhere. So they questioned him about why he wasn't shot. And he told them that they'd have to find the drug dealers and ask them. But investigators were like, how are we going to find a fictitious person? And Connor kept up the ruse, saying they're not fake and he's not lying. When they asked to give them the drug dealers' numbers, he can't. He expects them to believe that these two unknown men got in the car and that he's never once exchanged a text or a call with either one of them. And neither had Lauren. But the investigators finally broke him down. They told him they think what really happened was that something went on between Lauren and Connor in that car, and that it escalated into Connor killing Lauren. And he finally admits that they're right. But still, his version is more tame. It's more tame than probably what the truth is. He keeps telling them that Lauren wouldn't get out of his car and that he just happened to have a gun with him. And he held it up and he told her, get out. And that's when, according to him, the clip fell out. And then the gun, well, it just went off. And there was ringing in his ears. And afterward, he looks and he sees that Lauren has been shot in the face. How brutal. Because we know that this wasn't an accident. We know that he purposely aimed that gun at her beautiful face. And he looked at her and he pulled the trigger, killing a girl that he once said that he loved and he cared about and connected with. But at least he admitted that it was him who pulled that trigger. The 22-year-old was arrested and sent to Tulsa County Jail, and he was charged with first-degree murder and desecration of a human corpse. They believed that Connor came to Mike's with a purpose that day, one that included a gun and getting Lauren alone so that he could end her life. But their focus right now was finding Lauren's body, and this search was intense. They had to track down the route that the recyclable items go down after they've been picked up from that receptacle. And it turns out that they're sent to a paper mill. Back on November 3rd, when they found Lauren's blood in that bin, the Broken Arrow Police Department sent 30 investigators to a paper mill in McCurtain County in Valiant, Oklahoma, where the recycling materials are processed. This facility is 200 miles away. It's a 3-hour drive. This is what it looked like back in 1975 when it was called the Weyerhaeuser Paper Mill. But in 2008, it was sold for $6 billion to International Paper Company, along with 9 other containerboard mills around the country. This is a massive operation. They have 72 packaging locations and 19 recycling facilities in 16 states. All this is to say, finding Lauren's body, or what was left of it, was going to be nearly impossible. This process is a very brutal one. Once picked up from that bin, the remnants of cardboard are dumped in a large pile, and then they're picked up by a front loader. This is actually a very big machine with a large bucket, so it would be very easy not to see a small person's lifeless body inside. Once full, the materials are then dumped into what's called an in-feed bunker. It looks just like this. The items are fed along a conveyor belt while being misted with water to prevent dust and other particles from getting into the air. Then it moves along and the items are dropped into a very powerful, sharp metal rotating drum area where it is ripped apart and broken down further into smaller pieces. And I am so sorry to do this, but as you're probably aware, Lauren was moving along this process. And that reality was sinking in for the investigators. And for me, every time I think about this, I'm sorry I get emotional, but I'm going to pull it together. As this search was going on, they were becoming aware of how this whole operation takes place and how it plays out. Once these items pass through this area, they're picked up by a claw machine and they're put through a rotating trommel. It looks like this, and it separates different size items, which are then sent to different areas and sprayed with a powerful stream of hot water. And then they go through a blower, which separates lighter materials from heavier ones. And then they're pressed through this belt system where they go through other sorting and breaking down processes until all of this is compressed firmly into bales of cardboard to be sent to other facilities and made into new products. Products like paper or cardboard boxes and similar materials, which is another very extensive process. These bales are often sold to many other companies so that they can make items themselves, or they're processed right there at the International Paper Company. And all of this is an automated process. It happens every day, all day long, every hour. And sadly, Lauren's remains went through this process. And investigators combed through acres of material, but there was no sign of Lauren or anything resembling her. This is what those bales look like. This is an actual police photo. They're huge. And it is devastating to think about Lauren going through all of that and now being lost somewhere. It's seriously the scariest part of this case to think about all of that. And it's unbelievable because once those bales are sold off, they go into a plant that looks like this and they come out looking like this, a huge 2-ton roll of paper. And then this gets turned into tissue boxes, cereal boxes, laundry detergent or fabric sheet boxes, and even mac and cheese boxes. I'm sure you can see where my mind went with this. This monster threw her away like trash, and this process didn't stop once it started. So at this point, the Broken Arrow Police Department calls in the Oklahoma City Metro Search and Rescue Team, and they bring in cadaver dogs, ones that can smell decomposition. They went to the plant, and they started outside here. They didn't indicate in any of these areas of debris, so they moved the dogs inside the facility. And as the dogs made their way to the bales, they still were not alerting. So they took them to the processing area that I showed you. This is a 20-acre mill. It's the largest in the world. These dogs were taken to the belts and the machines and the claws, and that is where they began indicating that they found their scent. They found Lauren's scent, decomposing human remains. She had been there. She had gone through the process, and now she was already gone. Now the crime scene technicians are combing through these areas, and ultimately, they found remnants of what they believed to be human bone fragments and skin. And when they were tested, the pieces came back belonging to Lauren. The DNA was a match. The reality was that Lauren had sadly been processed through this recycling facility and continued. And who knows where she ended up. But when I mentioned the items that are made from these recycled materials, just use your imagination and become as shocked as I was that this case was not talked about like some of the other cases that get so much press. A post was updated on the search and rescue team's Facebook where they sadly announced that Lauren was found deceased. And interestingly, out of the over 300 comments, one was from someone that knew Connor. His name is Ronnie Sanders, and apparently he's the father of a friend of Connor's. He knew Connor when he was younger. And he said this, and I wanted to share it because I thought it was important. And I know you will give me your thoughts in the comments because you always do. It said, quote, "Please don't get my comment twisted. As first, I want to send my condolences to the family and friends of the girl. It is sad that they must now endure the loss that will forever change their lives. I hate that this happened. I especially hate it because Connor was, at a younger age, always welcome at our house, as he was one of my son's best friends at their pre-driving age, 14 or so. He moved from Sapulpa to Broken Arrow, and my son and Connor lost the availability to communicate as much as they once did. However, because unlike many of you who probably never knew him, I, however, did. I can't tell you what or where it went wrong, and I in no way feel he is in any way justified by what he has done. I will, however, say that the Connor I knew wasn't a monster. He wasn't a person that I felt could ever do something even close to this. He instead was a normal child. I don't believe in any way that he planned this. I instead feel it was most likely something that escalated to a point of no return. And when it was over, he then thought to himself, what have I done? It's a sad fact that although the loss on the girl's part is greater and the family lost their loved one, the truth is that 2 lives are lost today. 2 families are forever changed, and normalcy will forever be different for both families. We all should remember and remind our loved ones that it only takes a second to accidentally make a mistake that ends up a permanent one. Remind our children to walk away and call someone for advice before they do something that they will forever regret. I pray both families are able to somehow return to some form of normalcy in time. My prayers are with all families and friends, end quote. And as much as I believe this man was trying to help, as you can imagine, this comment didn't go over very well. There were a lot of angry responses. For example, one person said, "All sympathy is for the murder of this young woman and her family. He made a choice. Don't try and nice him out now." But others agreed it was well written. And yes, it's true. 2 families will be grieving. Well, more than that, actually, with all the lives that Lauren had touched. But there were a lot of assumptions in that post that I just read from this guy. And I don't know if I'm okay with that. He said that it was an accident, something that Connor didn't plan, and something he regretted. Well, that man wasn't there. And as the investigation went deeper and this case was being built against Connor, more of the truth came out. And I'm going to get to that because I want to tell you what happened at the trial and how it all played out. But first, a message from Lauren's mom when she was interviewed days after the news came out about what happened to her daughter. I'm going to play you some news clips, but I want you to kind of understand that she was trying to say if anyone is in this situation and you've got all your friends telling you that this person is bad news, listen to them because it's just a matter of walking away. Those are Krista's thoughts. Here's the clip of that interview with Krista that she did.
She was so looking forward to trick-or-treating with her. That was what she was going to do that night. We knew that if Connor was the last person that she was with, that it was probably not going to end up very good. I don't want life to be easy for him at all. They've had domestic calls with the police department several times. We knew, we tried to get her to quit from hanging out with him and just let him go. I just want to say that if anybody is in a situation like that, to get out. If you've got every one of your friends telling you that this person is bad news, listen to them. Listen to them because it was a matter of, walking away.
And it's true, if you're in a bad relationship, you should try to get out. But it's actually the most dangerous times in domestic situations. It's not easy. I'm going to leave resources below because there are people who can help you or someone you know. Now, Krista was left collecting every picture that she could find of poor Lauren so that she could remember her the way that she was, the smiling, happy, beautiful little girl that she loved so much. She was trying to find any video or pictures that she could hunt down so she could cherish those memories. Here's one of Lauren singing in a competition. She had a beautiful voice. And of course, her and little Addie. And then 3 months after her death, Krista also showed the media Lauren's old bedroom where she grew up. Here it is now, the way her parents left it when she moved out. The pink drapes, the piggy bank, her stuffed animals, her zebra-patterned bedspread, as well as a teddy bear that Krista said Lauren carried everywhere because it was her favorite when she was a little girl. And it's sad looking at all this.
It was one of Lauren's favorites. She's carried this with her everywhere she went.
And Krista had transformed this place into a place for Lauren's daughter, where Addison could find comfort now that her mom was gone. She had pulled out all of Lauren's old toys so she could just surround little Addison with things that would remind her of her mommy. Krista, like me, was thinking a lot about her daughter going through that paper mill. Here's what she had to say about it.
It's a horrible visual thought in your mind that your daughter would be in that place.
Another thing that Krista let the media know is that after Lauren's DNA was discovered at that mill, the company decided to recall more than 30,000 tons of bundles to try to prevent Lauren's remains from being processed any further, and that the family was so very thankful for that effort. We won't ever know what happened. But Krista's wish at this point was that they could find Lauren's body so she could finally say goodbye. But that wasn't going to happen. But Krista said that Lauren's legacy will live on because she leaves behind her 3-year-old daughter who looks exactly like her, and she really does. Her ex-husband, Zach, also expressed his deep sadness and concern regarding her murder. In an interview on the news, Zach said that Addie missed Lauren so much, that she loved her mama, and he just cannot believe that Connor took her away from her. Lauren's aunt posted this picture on Facebook. It was a picture of Lauren twirling around happily in her wedding dress, and one of her and her papa, and it said, quote, "This beauty is safe in her papa's arms now. She loved her papa, and he loved her," end quote. Lauren's dad said to the media that it's true. She may have never been found at all if Connor hadn't confessed. She would have been long gone, and no clues would have been left behind. He also said that this being an accident was very unlikely, considering that Connor had a gun and Lauren did not. It makes sense. Losing someone is never easy, but when someone as young as Lauren is murdered, it hurts much more because it's not just her earthly presence that's taken away. Her future is gone. It's the death of all of the things she ever wanted to do. All of the Christmases, the Halloweens, the birthdays, the death of any love she might have found one day with someone who truly loved her, any children she might have had, places that she might have seen. None of that will happen. But life goes on for everyone left behind. But for Lauren, her journey on Earth was forever paused, right when it felt like it had just begun. Ultimately, during a search of Connor's apartment, they were able to locate a gun in the trash can. And police were able to piece together what they think actually happened that day. The truth is usually far simpler than the lies. They believe that Connor went to Mike's with the intention to convince Lauren to take a drive with him. And they ended up at an apartment complex parking lot where ultimately Connor pulled out a gun and shot Lauren. And after Connor brutally murdered a woman that he once claimed to love, he disposed of her and then went on about his day as though nothing happened. Not only did he go to work, only 9 minutes away from where he just dumped her body, but while he was there, he thought it was a good idea to clean up that crime scene. So who better to help than his ex-girlfriend Alex, a girl he broke up with before ultimately dating the girl he just killed. But what they didn't know was why. That motive would come out at trial, which commenced in January of 2020, just a month before Lauren's family was finally ready to hold a memorial for her a year after her murder. It was a celebration of life. It was held on December 5th, 2019, which would have been Lauren's 23rd birthday. It was held at the Rose Chapel at Floral Haven Funeral Home in Broken Arrow. Family, friends, and loved ones gathered to honor Lauren's life and her memory. The family said that they needed to hold a memorial ceremony not only for themselves, but for Addison. They said that even though Addison was only 4, she could understand that something really bad happened to her mama. Lauren's father said, quote, "I waited because I wanted to, But the fact is, we all need some type of closure, and her daughter needs it more than anyone to move on, end quote. Joe loved his daughter more than anything. All he wanted was for her to be happy and have a good life. But an evil man came into her life and took all of that away. Joe finds solace in the memories he shared with his daughter despite all of his heartache. Those memories are what keeps him going. Joe affectionately referred to Lauren as his Lala. It was a nickname that he had given her, and that just broke my heart when I heard him say it. Lauren's mom wants Addison to know that her mommy tried to be the mom that she deserved. It wasn't Lauren's or Addison's fault that they were separated and that Lauren was taken away. And by January 2020, the jury was ready. There were 6 men and 8 women. Connor, of course, pleaded not guilty. Despite all the evidence that was stacked against him, he truly believed that he was going to get away with murder, or at the very least, he was going to get a lesser charge. He believed in his innocence so much that he allowed Lauren's family to be re-victimized, having to sit through this entire murder trial where they had to hear every brutal and painful little detail about Lauren's final moments and her desecrated remains. The story that the defense tried to paint was that the gun had accidentally gone off, that Connor wasn't responsible, and that Connor never meant for any of this to happen. He never accepted any accountability for this crime. But the prosecution wasted no time calling their witnesses to the stand, including Connor's ex-girlfriend, Alex. The trial was painful, it was emotional, it was draining for everyone involved. However, despite all of Lauren's family's anguish, they knew how important it was to hold Connor accountable for his actions. And as this trial progressed, the state presented very compelling evidence, and it casted doubt on Connor's claims that this was a terrible accident. You know why? Because Connor was involved in a secret relationship with another woman while he was with Lauren. And after sifting through everything that was left on Connor's phone, they found messages in the days leading up to Lauren's murder, just days before. And these messages revealed everything about this new woman that he was dating at the same time that he was on and off with Lauren. Apparently, Lauren didn't know about this other girl, but this new girlfriend knew all about Lauren and she didn't like her. So you know what she did? She broke up with Connor when she found out that he had been hanging out with Lauren. Detectives also found text messages that Connor sent to his ex, Alex. And in them, he talks about how Lauren just won't leave him alone. In one of these text messages sent by Connor to Alex, he makes a derogatory remark about Lauren and he refers to her as a parasite. He was expressing his frustration, saying that Lauren ruined his life because he wanted to be with another woman and Lauren just wouldn't stop. She wasn't willing to let him go. So Lauren was standing in the way. And from an investigative perspective, this offered insight into what Connor's state of mind might have been like on the day he killed her. They theorized that Connor wanted Lauren gone, even if it meant that he had to do it himself and kill her. Anything to be with this new girlfriend and dump the old out like garbage, and that's exactly what he did. He threw out Lauren's body like trash, as if she didn't matter any more than the days-old newspaper and soggy cardboard that lay around her. But she did matter. She mattered to her brothers that she always fiercely protected. She mattered to her mother who loved her since the day that she was growing in her womb. She mattered to her father, who had been her first love, and she mattered to her daughter, who will never truly know her mother. All of their lives were changed the moment that Connor decided to pull that trigger. And though the defense pressed forward claiming this was all an accident, the jury had their verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. Next was the sentencing, and that happened a few months later in March. The 23-year-old Connor Brunner was given a life sentence in prison with the possibility of parole after at least 38 years and 3 months. Wow. Should have been no parole according to me, but who am I? It is what it is. He's currently serving his life sentence at North Fork Correctional Center in Beckham County, Oklahoma. And after the sentencing, Lauren's mom said this. She said, quote, "There won't be any closure. We don't have a body to bury, and we don't really have a memorial. There's not that grave site per se that you can have, so we have to create one of our own." End quote. What's probably the most frustrating and heartbreaking thing about this case is how unnecessary this all was. Lauren did not have to die. Connor could have just walked out of her life and not harmed her other than just leaving her with a broken heart. But unfortunately, despite how tragically unnecessary this crime was, it's not that unique. So many lives are lost at the hands of people who claim to love them. And I can only hope that Lauren's story will reach someone who needs to hear it. If you are that person and you're in a relationship that's placing you at risk, please reach out for help. Leaving a toxic and abusive relationship is not easy. You can't just walk out the door. I understand that. But there are people out there to help. You don't have to live like this. And more importantly, you can save yourself and you do not have to die like this. As for Addison and the rest of Lauren's family, all we can ask for is that they can find some peace. A loss like this is never fully grieved. There's never fully closure, and you never truly heal. But I do hope that they can find peace and purpose in the midst of their heartache. Just last year in 2022, her family and friends, they went to the Water Lantern Festival and they lit these beautiful lanterns on the water with pictures of Lauren and quotes and memories written on them. And it was just so beautiful, just like Lauren herself. A beautiful soul that was gone way too soon. Let's please remember her story. I'm so sorry to her family and to her daughter. And I thank all of you for being here today and listening to Lauren's story. I will see you in my next video. Bye.